So we found ourselves in a little predicament. It turned out that we needed more desk space for our kids staying home and having to do all their schoolwork at the house. So we decided to go ahead and build them a beautiful sapelli and maple desk or table, whatever you want to use it for, so that way they can get all their schoolwork done. As you'll see at the end of the video, they also use it for all the recreational needs too. But the point is, this thing's awesome. So, before we get started though, don't forget, smash that like button, hit that subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell notification icon so you can get all of our newest videos. In the meantime, let's get to the build. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and trim down our lumber. We're just basically using a jointing sled at this point. It's actually used for table legs, but we're just cutting off the one side to make it nice and true. And then running it through the table saw to true up the other side, so that way everything's nice and square. Now we're going to just adjust the fence and move it so we have 2 inches, which is about the width of the board just in general. And this will be one of our 4 legs. Now we're just going to go ahead and run a taper on the legs. Get that nice, cool modern look there. And then we're going to go ahead and create the little dados, grooves, whatever you want to call it, in the legs. This way we can set up for the castle joints. If you haven't seen our video on this yet, we'll leave a link to that. So now we're just going to go ahead and cut down the maple to the approximate width that we think it's going to be at. Probably could have been a little bit cleaner about this if we did some more measuring on this, but that's okay. Show you how that comes out here in a minute. We're just going to cut them down to their general length and width. The long side in this case is off to my left side, or yeah, my left side, and then the short side is on the right. Now we're just going to go ahead and cut the dado here in stretchers, and you'll notice actually we used a little board here to get this started. That way everything was aligned perfectly every single time. And then we just cut them down to their final height. And then a little test fit here. And they fit nice and flush. So a little demonstration of how the legs are going to go together. Just kind of pop right in. Now I can't stress this enough, you need lots and lots of glue on this. Make sure that you are just gluing the death out of this, because this joint, even though it's extremely strong, it could fall apart if you bounced up on it. And then just a little bit of finishing sanding here to get the table legs ready. This of course is after all the glue dried. And we're just going to go ahead and mark a little X here, so this way we know where the center is. Sorry about the camera angle, this actually is straight up and down, by the way. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and test fit our aluminum rod in here just to make sure that it fits in good. A little bit of play, but that'll be fine because we're going to be putting some epoxy in there later. This is kind of a general idea of what it looks like when they're all in there. And we did polish them up with some sandpaper, high grit sandpaper, before we did all that. So on to the table build part. So again, we're just going to go ahead and square off some lumber for this.
This is really, really important, especially on the table part. You want to make sure your joints are nice and just perfect. So we're going to plane down the wood, just make sure that everything's straight right off the get-go. Just that'll actually help with the next part, which is kind of chunking out some of the wood so that way we can get it ready for the bandsaw. This allows you to have a little bit straighter cut when you do it this way. Now you could actually go all the way through with just a saw blade, but we decided to kind of cap it off. And they're roughly about even on there, about 0.78, so just a little bit over 3/4. Then we just ran it through the bandsaw real quick. Well, not really quick, took a while, but needless to say. And then we just gave it a quick run through the planer here again, just to get off any of the marks that came in from cutting them in half there. And of course, lots and lots and lots of glue. So just like a cutting board, you want to make sure you got tons of glue on there, so that way we don't have to worry about things coming apart. Remember, glue is always stronger than wood, so glue is more than sufficient to hold this together. Our little assistant here helping out. Then we're going to go and throw some cauls on here with some packing tape, so that way we can make sure that it stays nice and straight. That's what I'm checking for right here. And just tighten that down, and voila. Next day we just ran it through the planer to kind of get off any marks that were left over from gluing them together. I don't know if you could hear the wife there, she was yelling out beautiful. And then we put the two pieces together. A little bit more glue here. And then of course, more cauls. You saw that coming, didn't you? Just wipe off the excess glue with a wet rag and let it sit for the next day or two. I think in our case we actually let it sit for about 3 days. Then pop it off, and notice these little lines, most of that's just dust, but ultimately not too bad. Give it a little sand down here just to make sure that everything is nice and flush. Get rid of any little lines that might have developed while it was drying. Since we used the cauls, we didn't have much to worry about on that. Now the frame, since it was kind of an afterthought when it comes down to it, we kind of did this a little backwards. So bear with us on how we wind up putting this in towards the end of the video here. Safety first. Now of course we just want to go ahead and cut down the mitered corners there. And then your standard run-of-the-mill glue job. And if you don't have one of these little devices, you will need it. This is a little jig we made to make splines on picture frames. And turns out it works on these bigger applications too, which is kind of cool. I have a little video on that that we'll put up above here for you. And that basically makes that cut right there. Because a miter joint is kind of terrible at holding anything together, so we wanted to reinforce that joint and make it really super strong. Because after all, kids are going to be playing on it. And then we're just going to go ahead and glue up that joint there real quick. And then we're going to put the triangles in so they are as flush as can be. There you go. That's basically it. And we just clamp them down really nice and tight. and let those dry overnight, because that will be a stressed joint later on. Next day we came back and we put a little chamfer on the bottom because, well, just looked cool. So kind of went with the look of the project. And putting the top on when you do this kind of backwards like we did basically is going to require a little bit of hard work here. Definitely want to make sure that you got plenty of glue though. And a good rubber mallet to sit there and bang the death out of that thing. And then just clamp it up. Again, more calls. And that's basically what it looks like in the end. After doing a ton of measuring, we finally got down to the point that we could drill all the holes all the way around, so that way they'd sit on each of the posts evenly. And then got it prepped for spraying. After covering those up, a little bit of lacquer to get us started here. And again, we did both sides. This part here is the top part. Get a nice glass finish on there after that. And then just come back through and do a few coats on the legs, primarily for durability, but also because it will give it a little bit of a shine. We didn't want to outshine the top though. This is just some 5-minute epoxy. It bonds pretty well, we found, to aluminum and wood, so we went with that. Actually did a little bit of this on the tabletop too, in one of the holes that was in the top to kind of smooth it out, and that actually worked out pretty well. Just want to get that in both sides so that way it all gets glued together and doesn't fall apart on you, you know, a few years down the road or whatnot. Even though the holes keep it in place pretty darn well actually. As you can see here, it's taking me a minute to get that in there. And that's what it winds up coming out looking like in the end.
I hope you liked our latest build. This is obviously being well enjoyed by my children, isn't that right?
Yes, Dad, it is.
I didn't pay her to do that. Here's your $5. So anyway, definitely make sure to like and subscribe and watch more of me paying my children off randomly on camera. And don't forget to hit that bell notification icon. Until next time, thanks for watching.